What's up, everybody? Today we're going to put this Grizzly bandsaw together that I got in the mail. It's the first Grizzly purchase I ever made. Just don't forget to put your safety glasses on to do it. Oh, it's the wrong ones anyway. Sorry, we don't need them. So we'll go ahead and start with the stand. One thing to keep in mind if you order something like this, I ordered straight from Grizzly. Took a few days to come in, but something this heavy typically comes on a freight truck, so you have to pay extra shipping. So whenever you're planning to purchase something like this, you need to go ahead and save up an extra $150 or so on top of the price that it says. So in this example, the shipping was $99 for the freight shipping, plus an extra $33 for the lift gate service. So $132 extra on top of the price listed on the website. So just keep that in mind when you get one. So just going to take all the parts out of this box, put the stand together, and then we'll get started on the bandsaw itself. Not too shabby. And here are all the parts for the stand on my table. It's just a few panels, some bolts, some leveling feet, and shouldn't be too hard to put together. I think all I need is a hammer. So the instructions for the stand were not in the box for the stand. So I'm going to see if they're in the bandsaw box. Take a look. Can you see that? Look at it. It's like dry. I'm going to have to clean that off. Well, we'll just continue taking things out of this box until we'll come across the instruction booklet. Yeah, there's no instructions. Alright, I found it. I just started sliding this piece off and I was going to stand it up on end. So there's the book. There you go. Alright, so the stand's done. I think I'm going to end up putting the bandsaw over here next to the drill press for now. So now it's just going to be a matter of adjusting the leveling feet to make sure this is level, and then somehow hefting the bandsaw onto this stand with my wife. So we'll see how that works. So we'll see that. So that'll be interesting. Well, that was not too bad, but we got it installed on the base. I got it bolted to the base, so it's all good and sturdy. So the next step is to install the trunnion base, which goes here with these two bolts. Alright, it's been a couple of weeks since the last clip that you... Alright, it's been a couple of weeks since that last clip you just saw. And the next part was to attach this trunnion base. So I took the bolts out of the bandsaw, put the trunnion base down, and put the bolts back in. Well, there you go. Next I've got to install the table, so I've got to get this up. So loosen that, and there's a knob on the back. Turn it all the way. I've got to thread this table on there somehow and turn it this way, and that's how it sits. In order to get the blade in, this piece just slides out. Then you can pass the blade through the slot. I guess I got to turn this to face this slot so I can get it on there. Alright, so it took me way longer than it should have to figure out how to get this out. I thought that was a set screw, but it's not. It's just I guess a positioning pin. I just took this little piece that came with the bandsaw and tapped on the back. Had to tap, pretty firmly. Got that piece out, so now I can thread the blade through there. Turn it to the right. It should sit like this. I gotta try to show you what you gotta aim for. You gotta try to get these screws through the hole right here. There, that one on that side's good. Just gotta get the one on the other side. There we go. And then you take the star knobs that came with them and you thread those on there. Someone told me that this coating would come off with mineral spirits. This dried, I guess, protectant kind of coating. So I'm going to give that a try in a little while. Next step is to install the rear fence rail. So those two holes right there. I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt on the Allen wrench first and go through there. Now install the front rail. I will spare you the misery of watching this whole process. Alright, the next step is to actually put the fence. So the fence has this little adjustable pad nut there and a little bracket that goes around the rear fence. Just hook it on there. So it's not really moving that great. I think that's because here the fence is resting on the table and there's a gap back here. Now the holes that attach this rail to the table are slotted, so I'm going to loosen these bolts a little bit, bolts here, and raise this table up to the top of that slotted hole. Fence back on. Yeah, that's better. Now there's quite a big gap here. I'm not sure exactly how much gap there's supposed to be. I can always adjust it later. The fence needs to be level from the front to the back, so now it slides a lot better. Block it. Not too bad. The next thing to do is to take this little pin that came out of the front of the table and be sure to put it back in. What that does is these two halves of the table, where that split is, it keeps those in line during environmental changes. Once I get it cleaned up, I'll put a coat of wax on it so that it don't rust. And that is basically the installation of this bandsaw. What remains is to make sure that the wheels are parallel and coplanar. So I've got to do some adjusting on these wheels. Then I've got to tension the blade properly. And tensioning the blade, adjusting the wheels, and setting the bearings, the guide bearings, was not that difficult. Let me show you what I had to do. So tightening the blade was not that difficult. This bandsaw came with this knob here in the left position. And if I turn this to the left right now, it would loosen the blade and make it slack. So the first step to tightening the blade was I had to push this all the way to the right, and then I loosen these and then adjust this knob. So there's a guide block on the bottom here, and there's a red block inside. And on the side of the red block you can see measurements: 1/2, 1/4, 3/4, 3/8, and 1/8. So that's the size of the blade you have installed. This one came with a 3/8 inch blade. So all I had to do was make sure the top of that red guide block was lined up with the 3/8 inch mark. So you can see the blade riding on the wheel here. It's kind of dark. I'm trying to get it to where you can see. So once I had the blade tightened, I just had to make sure that the wheels were aligned so that the blade didn't track to the left or to the right, but stayed in the center. So you can spin it by hand and watch the blade, and it should track right on the apex of that wheel, on the rubber part on that wheel. So what mine was doing, it was tracking to the left. So I just had to adjust a knob on the back of the bandsaw, and that's this knob here, which is right by the guide block for tightening the blade. There's a wing nut on the back. You loosen it, and then you can turn this knob back and forth, and that'll make the wheel kind of tilt back and forth to make that blade track correctly. For the bearings, I had to just make sure that these bearings were sitting right behind where the gullet is on the blade. These two bearings. And to do that, I just had to loosen this bolt, and I could turn this by hand to push these forward. So I did that on the top, as well as the bearings on the bottom, which may be hard to see, but right there. And then for the guide bearing behind the blade, and this bearing just prevents the blade from getting pushed too far back that way whenever you're pushing a workpiece through the blade. This blade has to be 0.16 inches behind the blade. So this one was easy too. You loosen this bolt, and then you can by hand turn a knob in the back to adjust that one. And you can use a feeler gauge, which I had, or you can fold a dollar bill in half twice, and that should be about 0.16 inches. So you just use that as a shim to get that blade right behind. And these blades on the bottom, I forgot to mention, you do need to move these in and out. So they have to be close enough to the blade to where they're just touching the blade, so that when the blade's running, these are just barely spinning. And that's done by loosening that bolt, the bolt in front right here, that one, and then putting a Allen wrench in these front bolts, and these I guess have a cam on them. If you rotate the Allen wrench, it will move it closer or farther from the blade. So you do that on both of those, and then you tighten that bolt back. And don't forget to do it on the bottom as well. And really all of those adjustments were not that difficult. They're very well described in the instruction booklet. So it just took a little fiddling around to get those done. So let me turn it on for you and we'll see how it runs. And not too bad, so it cuts pretty well. And you can see how clean the top came out after using that mineral oil. All right, that's gonna do it for today. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking out my video. And please subscribe, and I'll see you around next time. Bye.